If you couldn't tell already, I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. From his iconic suit to his character to his various adaptations, he's been rent-free in my head for 20 years. While I never read the comics as a kid, in my final 3 years as a teenager, I've been making up for it. It's been slow, but it's been a fun ride. So fun that I decided to give one of these stories a Meaty Nerd episode. Which one, you're asking? Well, if you somehow can't read the title of the video, today I'll be covering one of Stan Lee's last stories, known as the 6-Arm Saga. And this is a story comic book fans don't like because it's quote unquote goofy, but I'll talk about that later. And now the question you're all asking, why not cover everything else prior to this saga? I have been thinking about reviewing the comics for a while, but A, my workload is big enough, and B, if I was to review them at this moment, they'd just be me screaming pick fiction, kinda like what I do on Twitter. I probably won't ever review the entire series, but I want to cover at least the important stories, and when reviewing the adaptations, I will talk about comic book accuracy. Because that is what comic book fans do, and if you bitch about us doing that, well, you shouldn't be wasting your time on Twitter bitching about politics like the soy boy bitter cucks and simp coomers you are. Anyways, let's get started with the first thing you see in a comic book, the cover. And my god, the cover for issue 100 is fucking amazing. It's a very iconic cover, and for good reason. It's a very simple but effective cover showing Peter's friends and foes he's made up to this point. The story begins with Spider-Man web swinging around the city until he finds some thugs and beats them up. One of them tries to flee, but Spidey catches him. Okay, Walker, you had your fun, but even Spider-Man ain't bulletproof. I don't have to be, you'll never hit me. God, I love Spider-Man's quips. After that exciting scene, Spider-Man states to himself that beating up thugs isn't as fun as it once was. Even web swinging is starting to get boring to him. In fact, he states this, I might as well face it, I'm just plain bored. Peter then laments to himself that maybe he's starting to grow up. Ever since he and Gwen started taking things seriously, she's been the only thing on his mind, whether it be good or bad. He declares that Gwen is what he wants, and who can blame him? Ever since his first appearance, Peter's life hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows. It's more tragic than the plot of Naruto. Jokes aside, you can't really blame him. Spider-Man has taken a toll on his life. He's lost his Uncle Ben, he lost his first love, his Aunt May has been sick many times, 10 issues ago George Stacy died, and so much has happened to him. The strain could be too great if Peter and Gwen were to be married. Once Peter is home, he pulls out what he had been making ever since he got his powers. If his radioactive blood became dangerous, he must take this potion. He finished it months ago but hasn't tested it. He'll be taking a huge chance. But he'll do it, for Gwen. Once he drinks the potion, his head starts to feel like a million explosions, deep inside his head. As he enters his bed, he declares he'll never be the same again. Entering his deep sleep, Peter relives portions of his past. First, Uncle Ben's funeral, the day he became a freelance photographer for the Daily Bugle, the day he lost Betty Brant to Ned Leeds, and finally the recent death of George Stacy, the only man of authority that respected him. Suddenly he hears a cry. The voice sounds similar to him, almost as if he's heard it before. He rushes to the cry, but once he reaches it, it's gone. In its place is the Vulture. He declares that, your time has come at last. Spider-Man manages to thwip the Vulture before he can get away, but it says something that triggers a nerve in Spidey. But the cry appears once again as the Lizard attacks our hero. The Lizard states he's been waiting for months, knowing someday he'd find him. And that line means a lot more than you think, by the way. Spider-Man launches at the Lizard, stating he mustn't let him keep him away from the voice. Lizard fights back, calling him insane, but Spider-Man loses it, screaming to not ever say that to him ever again. For it is the one thing anyone mustn't say, the one thing he must never hear. Spider-Man swings some more until he hears the cries once again, but this time louder. But just like last time, an old foe stops him, and this time, it's the Green Goblin. Goblin mocks our hero by claiming he was always a loser, that he never truly won and succeeded in life, and that all he ever did was survive. He even comments on how despite all his efforts, he's still hated by the public. Spider-Man however refuses to be reminded of this, and so gives him one powerful kick, knocking him out cold. Once he's taken care of, Spider-Man continues to look for the voice, but as he does, his side starts to hurt. It's unlike any other time he's felt pain. Even though it hurts greatly, he continues on, until he's sadly stopped by Dr. Octopus. The mad scientist then claims Spider-Man was never a good doer, claiming he was really in it for the fame, glory and thrills. But Spider-Man grabs Ock, throwing him extremely hard, while stating he didn't want these powers. It was all an accident, and once he got them, he couldn't just stand by, he had to use them. He then asks why can't anyone understand, and asks himself why he won't face the fact that even he doesn't understand. All I do is fight, but for what? Spider-Man's side starts to hurt even more, but he pushes forward. The voice that is calling him is that of a man. A voice he's heard before, but he can't recognize it exactly. He's almost there, but there's always something stopping him from reaching it. And it's not just the pain of his side, it's also the crime boss himself, the Kingpin. Kingpin then starts beating on Spider-Man, claiming he'll never reach the voice. Spidey then gets back up, replying that maybe he's been a failure, but he's never been a quitter. As he says this, he knocks out the Kingpin with 3 powerful punches. The pain is getting even more worse, but he marches forward. He then finally reaches it. The voice he was hearing was none other than George Stacy. George reminds Peter that he's been given great power, and he's tried to use it for good. No man could do more. There has been others with power who tried, yet they too were jeered, misunderstood, hated, and finally destroyed. He's tortured himself by trying to live a normal life, but he can't. He must accept the fact that he is Spider-Man. It is his blessing and his curse forever. The dream then ends and Peter wakes up looking back at that dream that felt too real. Sadly, the pain in his sides are still aching. In fact, it's even worse than it was in the dream. Peter then comes to the conclusion that the post has something to do with this. He slowly realizes what has happened, and he takes out his outer shirt to reveal that he now has 6 arms. And this isn't a false alarm. Peter is awake and the story will continue next issue. Peter is now in distress after gaining 6 arms. To make matters more worse, he never expected this to happen. Therefore, he never made an antidote. Suddenly Gwen calls Peter asking him for sexy times, but he declines because, well... He also tells her he'll be out of town for a while, so no sexy time for them. Afterwards, Robbie calls him for a little assignment, but he declines, stating what he told Gwen. Luckily, Robbie isn't JJ, so he understands Peter's decision to not take the assignment. Peter of course is saddened that he had no choice but to lie to both Gwen and Robbie, and is even more saddened that he's gonna have to spend the rest of his life like this, until he realizes there is a way to get rid of his 6 arms, that being Dr. Connors. He explains to Connors his situation and reminds him that he once mentioned a summer home he owns. Connors, after being the lizard a few times before and being saved by Spider-Man, decides to return the favor by letting him go into that summer house. After the phone call, Spidey decides to swing all the way there to the summer house. And in case you were wondering, yes, those pesky arms of his are something he needs to get used to. And now I want to discuss something about how fans feel towards this story. As stated, it's disliked because it's goofy. We are literally fans of a comic book about a guy who got his powers by a radioactive spider and somehow didn't die from the radiation yet. The fuck you mean 6 arms is goofy? Sure, on paper it sounds silly, but looking at what we just covered, this isn't something John Watts would have written. This is a genuine problem Peter has to overcome. His intentions were good, but the results have ruined him. If the whole world knew he was Spider-Man, it would lead to more tragedy. That is what George Stacy was warning him about. The potion didn't bring happiness, it only brought sadness. The only way for Peter to live in true happiness is to accept that he is Spider-Man. But why should he? It too caused tragedy and misery, right? Yes, he lost his Uncle Ben all those years ago. The people in his life have been caught in his web, has constantly let them down, and he's still seen as a menace to society. But at the same time, he saved the city from threats like the Kingpin, the Green Goblin, and Dr. Octopus. Aunt May has been able to live because of him, the Connors family has been reunited many times because of him, he's gained friends like Harry Osborn and Mary Jane Watson, He's found the love of his life, and most importantly, he's become a better person. He's now maturer, wiser, and confident than when he was first starting. Sure, his life is going to get even more heavier and heavier as the years goes on, but there's always hope in his life, because that's how life goes. You must take the good and bad in life, for that is what Spider-Man is, a gift and a curse. So why don't comic book fans like this story? It has everything that makes a good Spider-Man story, so what gives? Oh wait, because it's not deep and complex or overly gritty, that's why. Spidey later arrives at the summer house, ready to cure himself, but he's getting a bad feeling despite his spider sense not going off. In the distance, a ship with angry men are looking for someone who has been making the trip a living hell for them. They soon find someone in the engine room, someone that looks rather strange for a human. He claims he doesn't want to hurt them, but they attack him. The man, despite moving like he's half asleep, can't feel the punches, but then he suddenly attacks them, fleeing from them. He quickly finds somewhere to hide until night falls. His skin has become very pale, his facial features have become unhuman, and is now decked in a vampire outfit. This creature is none other than Morbius, and his thirst must be quenched. He takes down all the remaining men on the ship, basking in his glory at first, but then says, "I live while they are all dead, and I only wish that I were they." He dives into the ocean and sometime soon reaches the same house that Spider-Man is in. He's been at it for 2 days but still hasn't accomplished anything, or at least it seems. According to his theory, the potion should be blue if mixed correctly. It sadly doesn't work, which results in Spider-Man getting really mad and stating that maybe he's gonna be stuck like this forever. Suddenly appearing as Morbius, attacking the wall crawler. Also, I really love this short fight. The different angles and poses used for the two really sell this fight. Especially this page. This is some Akira Toriyama shit, and this is from 1971. And somehow modern comics still can't make stuff like this. Morbius has defeated Spider-Man and is going for the kill. But luckily Dr. Connors enters the scene. But unlucky for him, as he evades Morbius' attack, the excitement, the fear, all changes him into the Lizard. Lizard ends up getting kicked into one of Connors' equipment, causing him to be electrocuted and soon enough knocked out. Spidey then swings in to save the dog but notices how light Morbius is. Spider-Man then tries to get Morbius to tell him more about himself, but he really doesn't care to talk to him, as he states, "Why should I waste my power in a dubious battle with you, when there is a world beyond these milled wing walls, a world ripe to become the prey of Morbius." Luckily, Spidey put a spider tracer on the vampire boy, so he'll be able to find him. Although he might have trouble with that now, since the Lizard is awake. Or at least from the looks of things. It's actually Connors that's awake. Very clever twist this is. Spider-Man tries to explain everything that happened prior to Morbius attacking, but suddenly Connors' skin turns human. However, he's still covered in scales. Connors realizes that when Morbius bit him as Lizard, it caused some weird disturbance in his cell structure, despite not having any blood taken out of him. Not only that, Connors turns back into the Lizard once more, but only in appearance. Or is it? The two then work on the cure to both of their problems, but still nothing has come. Until Connors realizes the reasons for his change. Morbius didn't take anything out of him, he put something in him, that being an enzyme. And so Spider-Man and the Lizard go off to find Morbius in order to get his blood to cure both Spider-Man and Lizard's problem. I know it sounds very silly, but I don't care. It's a comic book about a guy who got his powers from a radioactive spider. Deal with it. Speaking of Morbius, you want to know who he was before he became a vampire? Well, sit right back and I'll tell you all about it. Many weeks ago, a scientist named Michael Morbius was studying bats. What for? We won't know until him and his co-worker Nicholas are alone, because Michael's lover came in to see him. She tells him she's been getting lonely, but he can't let her know what they're doing. He even states to her that he'll be going away to do some research, but she decides to go with him because love, damn it. Upon getting upon the yacht Michael bought, the two in secret explain what they're doing. Michael explains that the fluids they got from the bats haven't slowed down his illness that has been slowly killing him, and now they need to move on to the shock treatment. They haven't had time to see all the possible results and side effects this could have on Michael, but they have no choice. Nicholas shuts off the machine after a moment and Michael seems not human. After a little while, Nicholas goes to see Michael, only to see that he's now become a vampire. Michael then realizes that the reason he has become a vampire is due to the back extract and the electric shock acting on him. Michael tries to find comfort from his lover, but he realizes that she would be terrified by what he has become, and so he throws himself into the sea, eventually leading him to where we first saw him. Getting back to the present time, it begins with a news station talking about reports of a strange being swinging around the city. That strange being, strange beings, turns out to be Spidey and the Lizard. And let's just say Lizard is starting to gain control again, meaning they need to find Morbius before time runs out. Luckily they managed to find him ready for his hour. Morbius tries to flee after being told Spidey wants to help him, but because bad guys are egotistical, he has no choice but to use force. The Lizard manages to extract the enzyme, and luckily the potion turns blue. He takes it and he's normal once again. Spidey's about to take it, but Morbius attacks, and to make things even more worse, he grabs the serum. You'd think he's going to destroy it, but no, he wants to drink it. Why? I do not know. What I do know is that Connor states if he drinks it, he'll die, admitted Spidey. Up until now, you've been pulling your punches with Morbius. And now maybe you know why. It's because deep in your heart of hearts, you identify with him. Whatever he is now, you must have sensed that when he was once human. And you wonder what it would do to you if suddenly you needed human blood just to survive. Would you do the sensible thing and turn yourself in, throw yourself in the tender mercies of society? Or would you become a murderous man monster, just as Morbius has? Face it fella, you don't know. And you just pray that you never find out. Morbius is about to make it far away from Spidey, though he flips a web line and clings it to him. But Morbius had more momentum than Spidey thought, so he's pulled right off the ledge. While he tries to reach him, Morbius ends up smacking into the bridge, which makes the webbing break. Luckily Spidey is saved by a garbage boat, but there isn't enough time for him to regain strength because Morbius is about to drown with the serum. Spidey tries to save him and the serum, but is only able to catch the serum. And with that is the last we will ever see of Morbius. After that, Spidey feels bad for not being able to save him, but Connors tells him to not talk crazy. He then takes the serum and at long last, he is back to being good old Spidey. Our story ends with Spidey and Connors discussing the current event they went through. And this is one amazing final scene that just showed how dire everyone's problems was in this story. It's quite a bittersweet end. And that was the 6-Arm Saga, and it was a fantastic story. This is how you celebrate 100 issues of an amazing series. This story has everything a good Spider-Man story needs. It's got tough choices, consequences, drama, and hope. Consequences and tough choices have always been an important part of Spider-Man, and it's told so well here. So well that I say this is one of the best Spider-Man stories ever made. The story takes itself seriously enough without it being so overdramatic. If this was made today, it would for sure be overly dramatic or treated as a joke. Morbius is a neat villain. He's nowhere near Kingpin, Dark Ark or Goblin levels of amazing, but he is one I've always liked for how unique his powers were and his personality. He doesn't want to harm people, but the monster inside him takes control of him, which makes his story all the more tragic. This is by far the most creative use of Dr. Connors. He is both useful as the brains and the brawns. And Spidey is great as always. He's simply the greatest and I don't even feel like explaining why. Just read the comics. Okay, but in all seriousness, Peter's resilience to what he goes through is very admirable and a great role model for kids. Despite how hard your life will get, you have to push on and it can and will get better. There is still a lot of Spider-Man stories that I have not read yet, and more than likely they're going to be a lot better than this one. But this is still a wonderful Spider-Man story that I would highly recommend to anyone who wants to get into comic books. And so that is all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this review and see you next time.